The hallway smelled like antiseptic and burned coffee. Too clean, too sharp. Dr. Marcus Reed walked fast, white coat folded over his arm, pager vibrating again against his ribs. Someone was crashing somewhere. Someone always was. He felt the eyes before he heard the voice. "Hey, you, hold up." Marcus slowed. Not stopped, slowed. The sound of boots echoed wrong in a hospital corridor, heavy and out of place. He turned and saw the badge, the hand already resting near the belt like habit instead of threat. The officer's gaze slid over him, lingering on his hoodie, his backpack, the tired set of his shoulders. "This area is restricted," the officer said. "You need to move along." Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. "I'm responding to an..." The officer stepped closer, cut him off with a small, humorless smile. "You people always say that." The words landed sharp, surgical. Marcus felt heat crawl up his neck. Around them, nurses slowed. A security camera blinked red overhead, watching without seeing. "I work here," Marcus said evenly, holding up his badge. The officer didn't even glance at it. "Funny," he replied, "because you don't look like a doctor." Silence stretched. The pager screamed again, longer this time. Somewhere, an alarm began to wail. Marcus imagined a patient's chest rising unevenly, a team waiting on him. Then the officer leaned in and said, quietly, deliberately, "Step away from the hallway before I make this a problem." Marcus's phone rang at the same moment. Emergency response lead, code black. He looked at the screen. The officer tightened his grip, and the doors at the end of the hall burst open. Dr. Marcus Reed learned early how to keep his face still. Still enough that people mistook it for calm. Still enough that anger didn't scare them. The hallway lights flickered as he walked, long white panels buzzing faintly overhead. His pager vibrated again, urgent this time, the kind of vibration that didn't stop after one pulse. Marcus didn't slow. He adjusted the strap of his backpack, checked the ID clipped to his belt, and rehearsed the next 30 seconds in his head. Trauma bay. Airway compromised. Move fast. "Hey!" The voice came from behind him, sharp and casual, like a thrown object. Marcus slowed but didn't turn. He'd learned that too. "Hey!" I said stop. Boots scuffed against tile. Too close now. Marcus exhaled once and turned. The police officer was tall, broad, uniform crisp in a way that didn't belong inside a hospital. His badge caught the fluorescent light. His eyes did not soften. "What's your business back here?" the officer asked. "I'm responding to an emergency," Marcus said. He kept his voice even, professional. "I'm a physician." The officer's gaze dropped to Marcus's hoodie, then to the backpack, then back to his face. He smiled barely. "You don't have clearance for this hallway." Marcus reached slowly for his badge. "I do. I work here." The pager buzzed again. Marcus felt it in his teeth. The officer didn't take the badge. "Sir, I need you to step away." "I can't," Marcus said. "Someone is waiting on me." A nurse paused 10 feet away, pretending to read a chart. 2 residents whispered, eyes flicking toward the badge, the uniform, the standoff. No one spoke. The officer leaned closer. "You're being disruptive." Marcus felt the familiar pressure behind his eyes. Not fear. Timing. The math of risk. "I'm not," he said. "I'm doing my job." The officer's jaw tightened. "Your job?" "Yes." Silence stretched. Somewhere, an alarm sounded. High panicked. Wrong. "Funny," the officer said quietly, "because you don't look like a doctor." The words landed heavy. Final. Marcus stared at him. He thought of his name stitched into scrubs, of nights slept on linoleum floors, of patients who only remembered his voice because they never opened their eyes again. "My name is Dr. Marcus Reed," he said. "Now move." The officer's hand rested on his belt. "You don't give me orders." The hallway felt smaller. Closer. The pager screamed again, relentless. Marcus's phone rang. He looked down. Emergency response lead. City level. The officer followed his gaze. Scoffed. Cute ringtone. The doors at the end of the hallway burst open. A gurney flew through, Nurses shouting, blood on gloves, oxygen hissing. "Where's Reed?" someone yelled. Marcus looked up. The officer didn't move, and for the first time, Marcus didn't either. The meeting room smelled like lemon cleaner and old carpet. Marcus sat at the narrow table with his hands folded, posture straight, shoulders tight. Across from him were three people who never quite met his eyes at the same time: a hospital compliance officer, a risk management attorney, and a deputy administrator whose badge read patient experience. No patients were present. "First," the administrator said gently, "we want to acknowledge how stressful yesterday was." Marcus nodded once. He did not thank her. "The officer involved," the attorney continued, "has filed an incident report." Marcus's jaw tightened. "So have I." "Yes," the compliance officer said quickly. "And we've reviewed it." "Reviewed. Past tense. Finished. What about the delay?" Marcus asked. "What about the patient who waited 12 minutes because I was detained in a hallway?" The room shifted. Papers rustled. The administrator offered a practiced smile. "There's no direct evidence the delay altered the outcome." Marcus leaned forward. "There was a delay." "We're not disputing that," she said. "We're just being careful with language." Careful with language. Marcus wrote the phrase down in his head. The attorney cleared his throat. "Officer Crow states that you became verbally aggressive." Marcus laughed once before he could stop himself. The sound surprised even him. "I told him my name," Marcus said. "I told him my role. I showed him my badge." "And he states," the attorney said smoothly, "that the badge was not clearly visible. I held it out. From his perspective." "From whose perspective?" Marcus cut in. "Mine didn't matter?" Silence. Not uncomfortable. Intentional. The compliance officer leaned in. "Dr. Reed, no one is accusing you of wrongdoing." Marcus stared at her. "Then why does this feel like a warning?" The administrator sighed softly. "We're just asking everyone to be mindful. Tensions are high. Hospitals are sensitive environments." "I know," Marcus said. "I run emergency response for 3 counties." That finally earned a glance. The attorney blinked. "You're on that committee?" "I lead it." Another pause. This one sharper. "Well," the administrator said after a moment, "that's impressive." Marcus felt nothing at the word. "So what happened to the officer?" he asked. The attorney folded his hands. "At this time, no disciplinary action is recommended." Marcus pushed back his chair. It scraped loudly against the floor. "Then I want a written record," he said. "I want the footage preserved. I want my statement entered without edits." The compliance officer nodded quickly. "Of course." Outside the room, the hallway hummed with normal life. Stretchers rolled. Phones rang. The world moved on. Marcus walked back toward the R, shoulders heavy. Nurses met his eyes this time. One touched his arm briefly. "I saw," she whispered. He nodded. It helped. A little. Later that afternoon, Crow's report circulated quietly. The language was clean. Clinical. Routine security interaction. Non-compliant individual. Situation resolved without escalation. Marcus read it twice. He didn't see himself in it at all. That night, local news ran a 30-second segment about hospital safety partnerships. Crow appeared on screen, smiling beside the hospital logo. Marcus watched from his kitchen. Lights off. Phone buzzing with unread messages. At 2:17 a.m., an email arrived. Subject: clarification request. It asked him to adjust wording in his complaint, to soften phrases, to remove assumptions. Marcus closed his laptop. At dawn, sirens wailed outside his apartment window. Real ones this time. He dressed quickly, grabbed his coat, and headed out. The city was already breathing hard. As he stepped into command, radios crackled. Maps lit up. Names filled the air. "Who's running response?" someone asked. Marcus took his place. "I am." Across town, Officer Crow checked his assignment board and read the name. The emergency operations room pulsed with low light and quiet urgency. Screens lined the walls, each one alive with data: ambulance routes, hospital capacity, weather overlays, ensign flags blinking red and amber. Radios murmured in overlapping voices. A controlled chaos Marcus had learned to hear as rhythm rather than noise. County 2 is stable, a coordinator said. City center are at 87%. Marcus nodded, eyes never leaving the central map. Divert non-critical trauma east. Keep Air Med on standby. Yes, sir. No hesitation. No questioning. This room always listened to him. Outside it, the world felt different. By mid-morning, Marcus's inbox filled with replies to his complaint. Carefully worded acknowledgments. Expressions of concern. Requests for patience. One message from hospital legal suggested mediation to preserve working relationships. He didn't respond. At noon, Officer Crow's name surfaced again. A logistics officer mentioned him casually. Crow's assigned to perimeter support for the city drill next week. Marcus paused. He's law enforcement liaison? Yeah, the man said. Union pushed for visibility roles. Marcus said nothing. He marked the note and moved on. The drill unfolded flawlessly. Sirens howled across the city. Emergency vehicles converged on mock disaster sites. Command flowed through Marcus's voice, calm, precise, steady. When a communications node faltered, he rerouted traffic in seconds. Applause followed. Not loud. Professional. Earned. Later, in a quieter hallway, a junior doctor approached him. Dr. Reed? Yes. I heard what happened, she said, lowering her voice. With the officer, Marcus studied her face. Concern, fear, calculation. I'm sorry, she added. I didn't know what to do. Marcus offered a small smile. Most people don't. That evening, the local paper published a piece on emergency preparedness. Marcus's name appeared once, buried in the middle. Crow's appeared twice, quoted about community trust. Marcus read it without expression. The next day, an internal memo circulated. Reminder, professional conduct and cooperation with law enforcement partners. No names. Everyone understood. Crow, meanwhile, felt the air shift. At roll call, his sergeant mentioned complaint. Not by name, by implication. We're under a microscope, he said. Watch yourselves. Crow scoffed quietly. For doing our jobs? The sergeant didn't answer. Crow noticed people looking at him differently. Not accusing, measuring. His body cam was requested for review. Routine, they said. He told himself it meant nothing. Across the city, Marcus stood before a wall of monitors as storm systems rolled in faster than predicted. Flood risk spiked. Hospitals prepared for surge. Activate contingency C, Marcus said. Full coordination. Yes, Dr. Reed. The words carried weight here. As night fell, sirens cut through rain-soaked streets. Radios crackled nonstop. Crow took his position at a barricade, rain slicking his uniform, watching emergency vehicles pass. A voice came over his radio. Calm. Controlled. All perimeter units. Adjust access. Follow command guidance. Crow frowned. Whose command? There was a pause. Then dispatch replied, clear as glass. Emergency response lead, Dr. Marcus Reed. Crow stared into the rain. The name settled heavy in his chest, and the system kept breathing. The storm arrived without ceremony. Rain slammed the city in sheets, turning intersections into mirrors and gutters into rivers. Power flickered in 3 neighborhoods within minutes. Dispatch lights bloomed red across the operations map, like an infection spreading too fast to contain. Marcus stood at the center console, jacket off, sleeves rolled, voice steady. Prioritize low-lying zones, he said. Hospitals on backup generators report status every 10 minutes. Fire and EMS do not freelance. Yes, Dr. Reed. Multiple voices replied. The sirens came next, layered, relentless, everywhere at once. At 9:42 p.m., a commuter bus hydroplaned on the West Bridge and slammed into the guardrail. At 9:44, a transformer blew near Riverside Apartments. At 9:47, a call came in from a nursing home with a failing oxygen system. Stacking incidents. a coordinator said tightly. Marcus didn't flinch. Open surge protocol. Activate mutual aid. I want perimeter control on all 3 sites. On the street, Officer Crow stood under a temporary awning, rain dripping from his cap brim. His radio crackled nonstop. The tone had changed. Less chatter, more orders. Perimeter Unit 12, dispatch said. Proceed to Riverside. Establish control. Follow command. Crow pressed the talk button. Copy. He drove through standing water, jaw set. The city felt different tonight. Unforgiving, watching. When he arrived, emergency vehicles already crowded the street. Residents stood barefoot in doorways, clutching phones and blankets. Crow raised his voice. Everyone back. Clear the area. A woman shouted, panicked. My mother's still inside. Crow hesitated, then spoke into the radio. Command, I have civilians refusing to clear. The reply came instantly. Perimeter 12, hold position. Fire is en route. Do not escalate. Crow frowned. We need space. Negative, the voice said. De-escalation only. Crow recognized it now. The cadence, the calm. He swallowed. Understood. Across town, Marcus watched Riverside's camera feed. He saw Crow's stance, rigid defensive, and keyed his mic. Officer, Marcus said, addressing him directly. Give them 10 feet. Keep lanes open. Let them see you listening. There was a beat. Rain hissed through the channel. Copy, Crow said finally. He lowered his arms. Spoke quieter. The crowd eased just enough. At the nursing home, generators failed completely. Darkness swallowed the building. Staff shouted down hallways. Fear cracking through professionalism. Marcus closed his eyes once. Brief as a blink. AirMed, I need immediate lift support. EMS, oxygen distribution priority Alpha. Yes, sir. Crow's radio lit again. All units, stand by. Bridge incident escalating. Crow drove hard, tires slicing water. When he arrived, the bus lay tilted, headlights glowing underwater. Firefighters worked frantically, jaws of life screaming. Crow started barking orders, automatic, sharp. Then the radio cut through him. Perimeter 12, check your tone, Marcus said. Not harsh. Firm. You're making it harder. Crow froze. I need space, he said, defensive. You need cooperation, Marcus replied. Lower your voice. For a moment, Crow considered pushing back. Badge, rank, habit. Then he looked around. Firefighters strained. Paramedics knelt in rain. Civilians cried quietly behind tape. Crow exhaled. Tried again. Okay, he said, voice rougher now. Okay, folks, I need you to move back with me. They did. Minutes later, the first patient was freed. Alive. Crow watched as EMS loaded the stretcher. His hands shook, not from cold. Back in command, Marcus tracked outcomes, not faces. He didn't savor control. He used it. By midnight, the worst had passed. Floodwaters receded. Power crept back. Casualty numbers stabilized. Marcus leaned back for the first time in hours. His shoulders ached. His throat burned. A coordinator approached quietly. Good work tonight. Marcus nodded. Everyone did. At 12:37 a.m., Crow's shift ended. He sat in his car, rain finally slowing, radio silent. He thought of the hallway, the badge he hadn't looked at, the voice he hadn't listened to. His phone buzzed with a notification. After action review, all units required. Crow stared at the screen. Somewhere across the city, Marcus removed his headset and rubbed his eyes. Justice, he knew, didn't arrive with sirens. But tonight, the system had spoken, and it remembered names. The after-action review took place in a windowless auditorium that smelled faintly of damp coats and burnt coffee. Crow sat in the second row, posture stiff, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles ached. Around him, uniforms mixed with civilian jackets, fire chiefs, EMS supervisors, hospital liaisons. Everyone looked tired. Everyone looked alert. At the front of the room, a large screen flickered to life. Citywide flood response. Operational review. Marcus entered quietly from a side door, tablet under his arm. He wasn't wearing a white coat now, just a dark shirt, sleeves rolled, hair still damp at the temples. Conversations softened as he passed. Crow felt the shift before he understood it. Marcus took his place at the podium. Didn't smile. "Thank you for coming," he said. "We'll keep this focus." His voice carried the same calm authority Crow had heard all night, now amplified by speakers instead of rain. Slides advanced. Timelines. Decisions. Outcomes. At Riverside, Marcus continued, we avoided crowd escalation through de-escalation. Crow felt heat creep up his neck. We had one moment where tone nearly compromised cooperation. Marcus said evenly, "It was corrected. That matters." Eyes flicked toward Crow, not accusing, assessing. Marcus didn't look at him. Lives were saved because teams adjusted. Marcus went on. "Remember that." The review ended without applause. It didn't need any. As people stood, Crow hesitated. His instincts told him to leave fast, disappear into routine. Instead, he stayed seated until the room thinned. Marcus stepped down from the podium, already surrounded by questions. Crow watched him answer them. Direct, precise, no defensiveness. A leader who didn't need to announce himself. When the crowd cleared, Crow stood and approached. "Dr. Reed," he said. Marcus turned. Recognition flickered, then settled into neutrality. "Officer Crow." The name landed harder than any accusation. "I didn't know," Crow said. "In the hallway? I mean..." Marcus raised a hand, not aggressively. "Just enough." "You didn't ask," he said. Crow swallowed. "I should have." "Yes." Silence stretched between them. Not hostile. Heavy. "I read the report," Crow said. "My report." Marcus's eyes sharpened slightly. "And it wasn't accurate," Crow admitted. "I framed it to protect myself." Marcus nodded once. "That's the system working as designed." Crow winced. "That's not." "It is," Marcus said quietly. "Intent doesn't change impact." Crow looked down. "What happens now?" "That's not my decision," Marcus replied. "It never was." They stood there, two men framed by institutional walls built long before either of them arrived. Crow spoke again, voice lower. "I slowed you down. Someone could have." "Didn't," Marcus said. "But they could have, and I carry that." Crow's chest tightened. "I'm sorry." Marcus studied him for a long moment. "That's a start," he said. "Not an end." A coordinator approached Marcus, interrupting. "Media's asking for a statement." Marcus nodded. "In a minute." He turned back to Crow. "Do better," he said, "even when no one's watching." Crow nodded. He didn't trust his voice. Later that day, Marcus stood before cameras. Rain finally gone. Streets dry behind him. "This response showed what cooperation can achieve," he said, "and where we must improve." No names were mentioned. That evening, Crow received an email from Internal Affairs. Subject: Formal investigation notice. He stared at the screen, pulse steady but heavy. Across the city, Marcus sat alone in his office, lights low, replaying the hallway in his mind. Names mattered. And now, the system was listening. The footage surfaced on a Tuesday morning. It wasn't leaked with drama. No anonymous tip blasted across social media at first. It arrived quietly, released as part of a public records request tied to flood response review. A local journalist noticed the timestamp, the location tag, the uniforms, hospital corridor, day. By noon, the clip was everywhere. Marcus watched it alone in his office, door closed, phone face down. The camera angle was fixed and indifferent. It caught the hallway lights, the nurse pausing, the officer stepping into frame. It caught Marcus holding out his badge. It caught the officer not looking. The sound was worse than the image. The casual tone. The pause before the line. "You don't look like a doctor." Marcus closed his eyes before the clip ended. Downstairs, the hospital buzzed. Staff whispered openly now. Some looked at Marcus with something like relief. Others with guilt. By afternoon, Crow's name trended locally. The union issued a statement about context and split-second decisions. Hospital leadership released another memo, this one about values and review processes. Marcus didn't read it. He met with legal counsel instead. Not defensive, prepared. This will get loud, the attorney warned. It already was, Marcus replied. Reporters camped outside the hospital by evening. Cameras pointed toward the entrance Marcus used every day. He took a different exit, not out of fear, but exhaustion. Crow watched the clip on his couch, uniform folded beside him. He saw himself on the outside for the first time. Stance wide, voice sharp, certainty unearned. He watched the moment where he should have looked at the badge. He didn't finish the clip. Internal Affairs called the next morning. Then the union. Then his brother. You messed up, his brother said quietly. Crow didn't argue. At the hospital, Marcus was asked to speak at a staff forum. He stood at the podium where administrators usually spoke and felt the weight of expectation pressed down. I want to be clear, Marcus said. This isn't about one officer. A murmur rippled through the room. It's about delay, he continued. About disbelief. About who is granted trust without proof, and who must prove themselves again and again. A nurse stood. Why didn't anyone step in? Marcus nodded. That's the question. The silence that followed was heavy, shared. That night, a national outlet picked up the story. The headline didn't mention Crow's name. It mentioned Marcus's role. Black doctor delayed during emergency response. Footage sparks review. Marcus read it once, then turned off his phone. Crow received notice of suspension without pay pending investigation. He packed his locker slowly, aware of eyes on his back. Some sympathetic, some cold. He deserved the cold. As days passed, policy discussions replaced outrage. Committees formed. Training modules announced. Body cam procedures revised. Marcus testified at a city council hearing, voice steady, hands still. He spoke of systems, not villains. This wasn't personal, he said, but it was personal to me. Applause followed. It felt wrong. Afterward, alone in his car, Marcus finally allowed himself to breathe unevenly. His hands shook on the steering wheel. The hallway replayed again uninvited. Exposure had brought truth into the light. It had also reopened the wound. And justice, Marcus knew, never healed cleanly. The suspension didn't feel like punishment to Crow. It felt like removal. His days lost shape without the uniform. Mornings stretched. Nights arrived too early. He attended mandated interviews, answered questions that sounded simple until they weren't. Why didn't you check the badge? I assumed. Based on what? Crow hesitated every time. There was no clean answer. Across town, Marcus's life filled with meetings that looked like progress. Policy drafts, listening sessions, panels, invitations to speak. You're a voice people trust now, one administrator told him. Marcus nodded, then went home and sat in the dark. Sleep came in pieces. The hallway returned at odd hours. The hum of lights, the pause before the words. Sometimes he woke before the line, sometimes after. His chest tightened either way. At work, people deferred to him more carefully now. Some overcorrected, asking permission for things they never had before. Others avoided him entirely, unsure which version of him they were allowed to know. A resident caught up with him one evening. You okay? Marcus smiled automatically. I'm functioning. She winced. Right. At the investigation hearing, Crow faced a panel of strangers who knew him only through footage and transcripts. He answered plainly. He didn't offend his tone. He didn't minimize the delay. I was wrong, he said, and I used my authority to make it worse. The room stayed quiet. When the findings came, they were decisive. Policy violations, bias indicators, suspension extended, mandatory retraining, demotion. Crow read the notice twice. He didn't tear it up. He folded it neatly and placed it on the table. The union appealed. He declined their lawyer. Marcus learned of the outcome through an email marked confidential. He read it, then closed his laptop. No relief came, just a dull settling. At the hospital, a new protocol was announced. Credential verification at all restricted access points, regardless of appearance. Training on implicit bias made mandatory. Reporting pathways clarified. Marcus listened as the announcement played overhead. He thought of how small the changes sounded, how large they had taken to earn. That night, Marcus visited his mother. She hugged him tightly, longer than usual. "I'm proud of you," she said. He nodded into her shoulder. "I'm tired." "I know," she replied. Crow attended a community forum, quietly, sitting in the back. He listened as Marcus spoke about resilience, about cost. "There's a narrative that justice feels good," Marcus said to the room. "Sometimes it just feels heavy." Crow didn't clap. He couldn't. Afterward, he waited near the exit. When Marcus passed, Crow spoke once. "I'm leaving the force," he said. Marcus stopped, looked at him. "Why?" Marcus asked. "Because I can't unlearn what I learned too late," Crow replied. "And because staying feels like pretending it didn't matter." Marcus considered that. "What you do next matters too," he said. Crow nodded. "I know." They parted without ceremony. Weeks later, Marcus stood in the same hallway where it began. The lights still buzzed. The floor still shone. A nurse passed and smiled. "Glad you're here, doctor." Marcus returned the smile. It didn't erase the past, but it carried him forward. Some costs never disappeared. They simply changed shape. The hallway had not changed. The lights still hummed with the same tired buzz. The floor still reflected faces and pieces. The security camera still blinked red, indifferent, patient. Marcus stood there longer than necessary, hands in his pockets, feeling the echo of what happened months ago settle into something quieter. Not gone, just absorbed. "Dr. Reed?" He turned. A young security officer stood a few steps away, posture careful, voice respectful. "Yes. I just wanted to say thank you," the officer said, "for the training session last week. It helped." Marcus nodded. "Good. That's the point." The officer hesitated. "We're doing things differently now." Marcus watched him walk away. He believed him, and he knew belief alone was never enough. Later that day, Marcus sat in the emergency operations room as a routine drill wrapped up. Screens dimmed. Radios fell silent. The city exhaled. A coordinator approached with a thin smile. Council approved the reforms. "Implementation matters," Marcus replied. "It does," she agreed. "And you're leading it." Marcus felt the weight of that settle in his chest. Not pride, responsibility. Across the city, Crow packed the last box from his apartment. He had taken a job with a logistics company, far from sirens and badges. Some nights, he still heard the hallway in his dreams. He didn't try to silence it. It reminded him to listen. The story moved on, as stories always did. Headlines faded. Committees dissolved into policy language. The city found new crises to absorb its attention. But something had shifted. At the hospital, residents stopped Marcus in hallways, not cautiously now, but openly. "How did you keep going?" one asked. Marcus considered the question. "I didn't stop," he said. "There's a difference." On a quiet evening, Marcus stood outside the ER entrance, watching ambulances arrive and depart, lives intersecting briefly with light and sound and urgency. He thought of the patient who had waited, of the delay that could not be undone, of justice that arrived without apology. He also thought of the nurse who had whispered, "I saw," of the firefighter who followed a calmer order, of the officer who finally lowered his voice. Damage had been done. It would always be there, layered into memory, into instinct. But so was change. A stretcher rolled past. A paramedic called his name, his real one, clearly, without doubt. "Dr. Reed, we're ready." Marcus stepped forward, not healed, not untouched, but still standing. And when he moved down the hallway this time, no one stopped him.